you only have enough passion and time and mental space to do one thing really, really well. Show me somebody who is a jack of all trades. I'll show you somebody who's a master of none, and that's often true if you want to reach a high level. So I basically just quit all of my martial arts like just like overnight. I just like, okay, I'm gonna do this and I want to do it well. So I had to quit everything. So in 2005, I wrote my first book, which is it was a low fantasy. It was god awful. It was 180,000 words, and the thing is, like, it just I made it was one of the most important books I've ever written because I made all the mistakes you can make as a writer.
Hello and welcome to this special author interview for FanFiAddict. I'm Frasier Armitage, sci-fi writer and reviewer for FanFiAddict.com, and joining me today is a #1 New York Times best-selling author. You'll know him from The Lives of Tao, from Time Salvager, from his War Arts Saga and Book 1, The Art of Prophecy. He's here to talk to me today about the sequel to that book, The Art of Destiny. It is, of course, the Kung Fu master of SFF. It is Wesley Chu. Wesley, how are you today?
I'm good. Hello. I've never heard of being called the Kung Fu Master of SFF. I will take it, but I'm pretty sure you're just gonna get me challenged next time I see a few people.
I think you could take them down. I think it's all good. I have confidence in you, you know?
I mean, let's just be honest for a second, okay? I was really big into martial arts in my 20s, my teens and my 20s, and at some point in my 30s, when like getting punched in the head, you see like I lived in Chicago for a long time, and one of my sparring buddies was this like Chicago Bears practice squad guy. You know what Chicago Bears is? Football team,
Yeah.
bunch of big athletic dudes, professionals. So I mean, he was like a practice squad guy, so he's kind of a lower tier guy, but they're still big dudes. And like when you're in your 20s and you get like punched in the head, you're like, wow, that's a good hit. But when you're in your 30s and you get punched in the head, you're like, that's a concussion. So, and that's kind of why I retired at one point. And that and just like, I moved on to writing, and there's only so much room in your life to have like one real passion. But I'm almost 50. Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are a surprisingly large number of martial art SFF writers. So I'm pretty sure I wouldn't get very far in the Fight Club if it did come down to
Uh, I,
that.
if it was me, I'm pretty sure that your little finger has still got more martial arts prowess than I do in my entire body. So I'm not going to challenge you. So you're safe from me. It's all good.
All
Um,
right,
so
I'll let you
let's.
live today.
Thank you. The I think that yeah, what you're saying then about sort of stepping away from martial arts and into the writing, that's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about, is sort of your origin story as a writer. What was it that sort of, that led you onto that path?
Okay, well, so it actually started at a really young age. Well, my back in the 70s, 1970s, okay. Um, my father kind of immigrated to the United States to like study English. And back in the 70s, you know, we're from Taiwan, which is a small island in the Pacific. And back in like, in Asia, if you wanted to make money in the 70s, you learned English. That was like the money making thing to do. And it wasn't because my father loved English or reading or whatever, but he just wanted to make money. So he became an English major, studied Shakespeare, and he came out to the United States for his PhD. And we went to the University of Nebraska. So for those people who don't know where Nebraska is, I mean, it's a very common thing to not know where Nebraska is, but it's in the middle of the U.S. It's in the Midwest, and it's a lot of cornfields. So back in the 80s, when I first moved out there weren't that many Asians. There's like 5 Asians in an entire state, and like 4 were in my family. So I didn't have a connection to my home country. And all we wanted to do was like integrate. And what happened was one day when I was like 6, 7 years old, I stumbled upon this series of like Sunday afternoon movies called Samurai Sundays, and it was just really badly dubbed kung fu movies. and I just fell in love with it. This was like my connection to my home country, and it was obviously very skewed what it actually looked like. But like, so I grew up thinking like this is how like my people are. We punch through walls and we fly through roofs. So that kind of set off like this lifelong passion of martial arts. And at some point when I was old enough, I started training in kung fu, training in like tai chi, xingyi, and bagua, and yeah, and it just kind of became like how I got into it. It became a very big part of my life for a very long time until I kind of made that pivot to full time writing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so you're is that how you kind of fell in love with Wuxia through these like samurai Sundays?
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of like it was. I mean, who didn't want to fly through walls and who didn't want to like do the death touch? So I was all about that. Basically, like I have a 4 year old kid right now, and he loves Power Rangers. Like he's like all about Power Rangers. He has all the toys. He's doing like forms and katas on his own now just from watching the TV show. And I realized the other day that this his love for that is basically my love for like all those Jet Li movies back in the day. So it's the same kind of relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And so then sort of you decide to become a writer. How long was it before you kind of, went from like writing as a hobby to like it transitioning into like, oh, okay, this is what I do now. This is me.
Okay, so my journey on that length is shorter than most. In 2005, so I was training at one point like 20 hours a week. Like I was serious. I was my master's protege, and it was one of those things where like I mean, like lineage is an important thing in traditional kung fu, but I was driving like 2.5 hours a day to train. Every day after work, I would, go to the gym, work out, like lift weights, and then I would go work out for like 2 hours. I'd be home at 10 p.m. every night, and I realized one time, like I'm like, man, I'm like nearing the end of my 20s. I'm really good at martial arts, but like I don't have any friends. I don't go out. My life kind of sucks. I hate my job. So then I went back to like what I really enjoyed doing when I was a kid. And what sparked my passion as a kid, and it kind of went back to writing. So uh, I just like I said earlier, you only have enough passion and time and mental space to do one thing really, really well. Show me somebody who is a jack of all trades. I'll show you somebody who's a master of none, and that's often true if you want to reach a high level. So I basically just quit all of my martial arts, like just like overnight. I just like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I want to do it well. So I had to quit everything. So in 2005, I wrote my first book, which is it was a low fantasy. It was god awful. It was 180,000 words, and the thing is, like, it was just I made it was one of the most important books I've ever written because I made all the mistakes you can make as a writer, and obviously that book did not go anywhere. And after a year of like kind of working on it, I trunked it, got drunk for a week, and then I began writing the next book, which became The Lives of Tao, which is my debut novel. And that was in 2005. So that, but around 2005, I wrote it. 2007, I wrote the first draft of The Lives of Tao. And then I stopped writing for 3 years because I was a raid leader for World of Warcraft. So I was part of the number one guild on my server, and I was like the recruiting officer. So literally you had to get past me to get fat loots, and it was like a thing. So and after 3 years of that, where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I went back to to my books, and then eventually I found the open Angry Robot Books open submission of 2013, and that's kind of how I got started.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that you trunked the first one, you get drunk for a week, and then straight away you're on the second. I absolutely love that turnaround. That's amazing. It's great. Um, this is your 13th book now, The Art of Destiny, right?
I
So
believe so.
yeah, tell
You
us
know
a
what?
little bit about it.
I mean, it's kind of like your birthdays. It's like at some point you just kind of lose track. Like I had my birthday 2 weeks ago and had no idea how old I am. Like I had a Wikipedia myself. I'm like, what was? Oh, I'm 47. And like at some point after like X amount of books, you kind of lose track. But I'm sorry. What was the question again?
It tell us a little bit about your book. What's it about?
The Art of Destiny?
Yeah.
Well, The Art of Destiny is book 2 of the War Arts Saga. Book 1, The Art of Prophecy, came out in 2022, and it basically follows this, this the high concept of, what if there's a prophesied hero who is destined to like destroy this evil force. And honestly, 3 chapters into the first book, that evil force is destroyed by by this like foot soldier. What are the consequences that happen to the prophesied hero, to the nation, to everything, everybody that this prophecy touches? Like what? Imagine like the social upheaval that happens if suddenly like everybody, like Jesus started walking on the earth. Like everything that we've known, everything that we assume, everything that we predict is wrong. What are the social, the economical, consequences that happen throughout the entire nation? So this is what it's about. And book 2 kind of follows that progress of like, the main character Jian, who is a prophesied hero, is no longer the prophesied hero, and all the people who used to worship him, or all the dukes and kings who like took care of him, suddenly want to kill him because he's a liability now. So all these things happen, and we kind of follow his journey into book 2, where not only are you no longer who you thought you were, now you have to find your own way, make your own choices. And no, book 2 follows that journey.
Yeah, it follows it so well, because I kind of felt like the first book, The Art of Prophecy, was kind of like the hero's journey in reverse, where instead of like an ordinary person going on a quest to become the hero, it's kind of like the hero, like his quest is like, oh, how do I become like an ordinary person now? It's like, and I kind of feel like this is again like The Art of Destiny. It's really subversive in so many ways, and it's really playful with a lot of things, and I really loved that. It carries it through so nicely.
Oh,
um,
thank you.
how do you approach like writing a sequel? When the first book is so different and it's got all these different flavors to it. Do you approach the second book the same way, or are there differences to how you go about it?
So like I approach all my books really like the exact same way. And I do it almost like I'm reading a story. It's like every I consider book writing like a big puzzle, and it really 50% of that puzzle is just figuring out where all the pieces go and where you want your characters to go. I'm a big outliner, so I usually do a lot of outlining ahead of time. But I'm a huge fan of free will. I want my characters to have free will. So there are many times when I'm outlining and I want the character to make a right turn here and a left turn there, but they don't want to do that. Or like it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel real when I want to force them to do certain things. When like based off my read off their character, they want to make they want to go straight or whatever. So I let them do that. I let them go straight, and what I end up doing is I start re-outlining. So I'm outlining all the time. So by the time a book is done, I'm on like outline version 9.5 or whatever. So I don't intentionally, put them in a certain place. I might set a goal. I might set this is where I want the book to end, but I let them kind of like make their own journey. I let them meander. I like there are times when like they're so off track. I don't know what to do, but I'm like, then I ask myself, if these guys who have free will are way out in left field, maybe the problem is me. Maybe the problem is they shouldn't be ending up there anyways, because that's not where they belong. That's not where they want to go. That's not where the journey should take them. So it's yeah. There's no like set method. It's I'm in many ways, and this sounds really like one of those like really corny artistic things where like I'm just recording what they're doing. I'm just recording what they're doing and I'm letting it happen. And obviously sometimes I'll make some corrections here and there, but generally it's a character in a book is layered by how you build them, by their background, by their relationships, by their desires. And as you go deeper into a series, they they become a full-fledged onion. They have so many layers, and now it's all about just kind of like let all these truths that they have, in all their layers, make their own decisions. And in many ways, it's harder. Like I'm working on book 3 right now, and like Jian is in his early 20s, and like he's a complex dude, and he's not just about himself. He's he wants to fall in love. He has friends now. He is um emotionally attached to places. His new home, his new whatever. So he has these conflicts that sometimes doesn't work well with me trying to push the story forward, because he wants to do other things. And you know what? And that's okay. I mean, we're gonna figure that out. I'm gonna have to sit down and talk to him, and we're gonna have to figure out, like, at one point, dude, you gotta leave the town here, because you gotta finish the prophecy, bro.
I love it. So like book 1 is kind of like, you're discovering these characters, you're building their layers, but by the time book 2 comes around, you're kind of just letting them free. And then by the
Yeah.
time that you get to book 3, it's just like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and let you do the work. It's
I
like
mean,
let the characters
look,
work for it.
I gotta drag him a little bit. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm doing a little nudging. You know how when you have a dog, you're trying to like nudge a dog along without like yanking him at the neck. I'm trying to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got them on a tight leash. Yeah, it's really good. Do you feel like, with this being a sequel to a book, and it all being character based and people falling in love with your characters, do you kind of feel like a little bit more pressure with a sequel when it comes to getting the characters right?
A little bit. I mean, one thing I do in my books is I always have a bit of a time jump in between books. Art of Prophecy had a 2-year time jump with Art of Destiny. Art of Destiny is going to have like a 3-year time jump with book 3, and I like doing that because we are different people than who we were 2-3 years ago, easily. So because I mean, Jian is still Jian, Taishi is still Taishi, but their circumstances have changed. And kind of when you do have that small time jump, it allows you to kind of explore different facets of who they are. Otherwise it becomes one of those like weekly 30-minute sitcoms where like everything resets by the end of the episode, and that's not the kind of stuff. Because if I do that too much, I get kind of bored. I want to see them in different situations with new problems, with new relationships, and like new circumstances to navigate.
Totally, totally. It makes it so much more interesting as a series as well when you've got those jumps in, because it's all of the stuff that you don't know is feeding what's coming, and I
Yeah.
love that.
I mean, and they're still them. They're still who they are. It's just kind of like for example, I think like in the Lives of Tao, which is my debut novel. The main character, Roland Chan, was like in his late 20s when in the first book. And by the end of the third book, I mean, he's got a 15-year-old kid. And then he has a pretty sizable role in the sequel trilogy, and in the Fall of Io, I think he's in his 70s. So I mean, I write that character over a span of like 50 years. And it's kind of fun because when you read who he is as a 70-year-old, and you read who he is as an early 30-year-old, you still see Rowan. He's still totally Rowan. He's still kind of a klutz and goofy, but he's still like a lovable idiot. But now you see him as like a lovable idiot with like back problems, and it's a whole different level of like of just circumstances he has to deal with. But he's also so much more experienced. But it's still that same facet of who he is that that's kind of like drives his character.
That should have been on the cover, like lovable idiot with back problems. That's a great
Lovable
tagline.
idiot.
I love it.
Yeah, that should be a blurb. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Why I'm interested about the setting of this, of the War Arts Saga, because it could have been so easy to set it in a historical setting, but you choose this like almost fantasy type setting with the king and the queen sort of, and the prince and the princess coming over and tinting the air differently. And what was the choice to set it in on like this otherworldly sort of setting as opposed to going back in history?
You know, this is my first published fantasy series, and at the time I was like, "Whoa, man! If I'm going to create a secondary world, go crazy, man. Go nuts. Find the inspiration from every lucid dream I ever had, and throw it there. Like the concept of the grass sea, which is this 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 giant you know this like this giant like this there's land floating on an ocean, and the jungle of this land is like basically like 3-story tall like weeds, and then the land actually moves because it's floating on the water. And I thought about that really early on when I was like brainstorming the story, and I'm like, why don't you just kind of like make the land a character? And that's always been one of the things I like to do. Is I like to my stories aren't a play where like there's a stage and then we're here to see the people talk and interact. I want the land to be a character that people interact with, that kind of spark wonder in the readers when they kind of like when you introduce it to them, and kind of like give them just enough that they're like, well, okay, that their own imagination kind of like starts to roll and pop. So yeah, I just like having fun with it. It's I feel like there's that section of the story where there's the ocean of sand, and that was just something like I'm like now that I have the grass sea, what would happen if we were to just kind of like they're right next to each other. So how does the land react then, and how does that land that reacts in this way change the people, change the culture, change how the characters interact with things? Because at the end of the day, everything is interrelated. It's like Avatar, it's like we nothing exists in isolation. So if that is the case, let's work backwards. If this physical property of land is the truth, how does that affect every single other aspect of the story and the people around it?
Yeah, and I guess as well, it kind of makes it easier to create in that kind of world, because you're not having to worry about, well, if I write this way, is this going to be somebody that says actually that isn't correct, it was really this way instead? Whereas when you create your world, you're the master of it, aren't you? If someone says, well, the grass seed, they're only like 2 meters tall, and you're like, no, I think I know how big the grass seed is.
Well, I mean, okay, it's one of those things where like it's still a fine balance, okay, because you okay, I'll give you an example of a video game I played earlier. I think this year I played Elden Ring. Okay, and Elden Ring, it's one of those like roguelike games. I don't know if you played it, but and one of those games where like you could it's a fantastical world. There's dragons and there's demons, whatever, and you have all these characters. And I played a mage, a spellcaster, because I always play spellcasters because I can't spellcast in real life. So if I'm going to play it in a fantasy world, goddamn it, I'm going to be a spellcaster. But so I played the game, and it's a great game, and I buy into all the fantastical elements of the game. But there's one thing that kept throwing me out of the game, and it pisses me off. Okay, and it's that every character, no matter how martially trained or how nerdy of a spellcaster, they all could do forward and backward rolls like Olympic gymnasts, and that kind of pissed me off. Okay, because that is a skill. Okay, to do a dive roll. I was a gymnast, but that is a skill to do a dive roll properly without getting hurt. And these guys are like hopping left and right. And like, why? How do you, as a nerdy spellcaster, how do you know how to do somersaults so well? And that pulled me out of the game and it really upset me. So going back to the story, there are aspects of world building that you can go as crazy as you want, as long as the reader buys into it. Okay, but you got to be careful, because I can break certain rules of physics and create interesting magical laws, but the instant something doesn't make sense or kind of like steps outside of the realm of believability, then you have a problem. So like these people will buy the fact that there's an ocean rolling the land underneath their feet, but the moment the character does something where they're like, wait a minute, that's not how fire is made, then they have a point, not me. They have the point. It is up to me as the world builder to make that world believable.
I love that. That's such good advice for world building. That is brilliant. I was reading one of your interviews that you did for Grimdark magazine last year when The Art of Prophecy came out, and you described The Art of Prophecy as like the most you sort of book. You know, it's got like the sum of all your experiences in it. But you also said that it was a book that you could only write now. You couldn't have written it sooner. And it got me thinking about the link between like our experiences and what we go through and also our imagination. Do you think that with like the more books that you write that these kinds of things coalesce a little bit stronger, and that the our experiences, the link between those two things, the experiences and our imagination, does that strengthen over time as well, do you think, as a storyteller?
I mean, I don't know if that's a correlation. When I said that the Lives of Tao was I'm sorry, the Art of Prophecy was the most you book, my most me book. I mean, really, what I meant was like, I have a very particular personality and a very and a natural writing style that's very me. I'm known for my action. I'm known for my humor. I'm known for having these kind of like slightly loser but lovable characters. Um, and and I would say the nearest comp to Taishi and Jin are like, my from my debut novel. Story about that is like, well, when my dad, who's an English professor, when he first read an early draft of the Lives of Tao, he was like, "Son, I read your book. It's good, but there's a problem with it. Your main character, he's likable, but he's not very likable. He's kind of whiny. Was he modeled after you?" And you know what? He was right. My dad knows me best, you know. I mean, he didn't have to say it like that, dude. But like, but so I mean, I have a natural like tendency because I write what I like and I read and after the Lives of Tao series, I tried to do different things. I wanted to expand my horizons. So I wrote the Time Salvager books, which is like really dark science fiction, and I did some work with Cassandra Clare, and then I wrote a Walking Dead book. So the Art of Prophecy is in many ways me coming back to like my pure sense of storytelling. Like I said, I was a big martial artist a long time ago, and like when I was a kid, I wanted to read more kung fu books, but there weren't any, and there weren't even any books set in Asia for the most part. I think the only one that I've ever read that was remotely, in the Asian setting was Raymond E. Feist's the Rift War Saga. I'm sorry, the Daughter of the Empire series. Okay, and and I love. The thing is, I didn't even realize it was in the Asian setting until like book 2, because I was so used to having that default white, European, Arthurian legend kind of setting. So it took me a while to even figure that out. But and there just wasn't a market for it until like when I debuted in 2013, there was no market for that either. And I conceived of the Art of Prophecy in like 2015, but at the time I was writing science fiction. It's not easy to just jump genres, and I just wasn't ready for a large sprawling epic. So it took me like 10 books before finally I was like, okay, 2019, I finished off all my other projects. I am ready for this. Let's go.
Awesome. That's brilliant. And between obviously a big difference between you writing The Lives of Tao and then you writing The Art of Prophecy and The Art of Destiny, is that you're saying about your dad. Well, in between that time, you've become a dad, and you've got kids now of your own. And has that had an impact upon the kind of stories that you want to tell, or certain aspects of the stories that you want to tell?
I mean, honestly, I'm writing a whole lot less. Look, I have a 7 and a 4-year-old. Okay, so in 2016, I had my oldest child, Hunter, and then River was born in 2019. So I essentially had a pandemic baby. So 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 I went from writing at one point 2 books a year to like 1 book every 2 years. And part of it's like these books are much, much bigger. The Art of Prophecy is 180,000 words. The Art of Destiny is, what, 230, 240, I think. And I know I've seen some complaints that book's getting a little long, Wes. So the last book's probably going to be around the same length, 220 to 240. But does it change the kind of books I want? I don't think so. If I were to write middle grade, and to be honest, I do think that my most natural voice should be middle grade. Like I would love to write middle grade, but again, it's one of those things where like pivoting is not always easy, especially since once you have an established track in writing, there's an inherent risk to pivoting, and pivoting too often. So I just made one pivot. I can't make another one for a little while, but I mean, I would love to like I love being a dad. I love having kids, and it's a lot of fun. I hang out with them all the time, and I'm their best friend. So there are definitely stories I want to tell that my kids would love to read when they're like 8, 9 years old. And well, one of these days I want to get to it, but it's currently not in the cards.
Well, I hope that you do get to it because I would love to see a Wesley Chu middle grade book that I could read to my little one as well. That would
Oh,
be
how old's your kid?
epic. He's 2.5, so he's at that
Okay.
perfect phase for wanting to do everything himself, which is it never stops, does it? That it's like once they hit that.
Oh, I mean, when people say the terrible twos, that in my opinion, in my experience, is a lie. I think they are a delight when they're two. They are awesome because when they're two, their personality is just coming out. They have that self awareness now, but you're still their dad, and they still want to please you, and they still want to hang out with you. It's when they're three is when like that sense of ego comes in, and then but they have now they know they want certain things for themselves, but they don't. But they can't verbalize it properly, so they just become assholes. Like for both my kids, like one was great, two was amazing. They become total assholes at three, and then they kind of like regain their lovable self at four. So
It's,
that's been my experience. So you're enjoy what you have for the next 6 months because you're in it after that, after they turn three.
I'll watch out for the terrible threes. I'll watch out for it. That's great. Let's come back to your background in martial arts because
Okay.
the thing that that was really impressed by in your stories is how the action it's more than just cool action. It's like there's story in it. It's got meaning in it. Is your background in martial arts and your working as a stuntman, did that help you when it came to what you wanted to get out of your action, and making it sort of more than just kick punch?
Right. Absolutely. So really early on in my career, before I was published, I took a lot of pride in like having like quote unquote realistic martial, like in the fight scenes. Like these are fight scenes that if you read it and you know what you're doing, you can reenact it. And I had these long ass fight scenes because I was a purist, and when you do like stunt work, or when you do forms or whatever, it's all about being exact, because if you're not exact, somebody gets hurt. But it's also a balance of like having good action without being boring. And early on, I didn't have that balance. So like, my wife would read my action scenes, and she'd be like, after a while, you start glazing it over, and she's like, you know what, at this point, you're just mentally masturbating now, you know, and it was true, because so it took me some time to kind of like hone in on what that balance is. And when it comes to like, and the thing is, I love my action scenes. I'm known for my action scenes, and I'm known to be one of the better writers for action scenes. And the thing is, for me, action scenes should do a lot of heavy lifting for a book. Okay, not only should they be exciting, and they should have great action, but a proper action scene should also do character development. They should be doing world building. They should be pushing the plot on. They should do, you know, 3 of the 5 things. Okay. And after the action scene, there has to be consequences. So if somebody is coming out of an action scene exactly the same as they were when they went into the action scene, then just get rid of the action scene. So so an action scene has to be multi-layered, because they should be doing several things, and that was one of the things I kind of like honed on over time is like how do you write an exciting action scene that pushes so many things along, because especially since that was kind of like one of the things I really rely on is having these great action scenes is so yeah, it's become kind of an art for me of kind of like using that as a vehicle to like really introduce other aspects of the story.
Yeah, and it feels so natural in the story because of that. It doesn't feel like it changes the pace of the story because you're still getting all of those things from it. It's like, oh yeah, this is part of the, there's a meaning to it. How do you start about choreographing them and then structuring them? Do you're saying about it having to do like three of the five things? Which one do you start with usually? Is it always the same? Do you think, right, okay, we need to change the pace here, or do you think, right, okay, I need to tell this, and the only way to do that is through a fight? Or what do you start with when it comes to, if somebody was wanting to write an action scene like a Wesley Chu action scene, where would they start?
So the longer I've become a writer, the less technical I've become. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, I mean, I used to think like, okay, well, let's say I want to have this action scene. I want them to end here. Let us flavor it with, what senses do I want them to feel? What plot points do I want to move them along? And as I've become a more experienced writer, I kind of stopped doing that. And honestly, everything's kind of by feel, you know. And that's the strange thing about writing is that in most other careers, whether you're an attorney or you're an IT or you're an accountant or whatever, the longer you've done a job, the more confident you are, the more experienced you are with it, the more like you identify problems. You can like you can get the work done quicker because you are better at your job. For me, that's not the case with writing. With writing, I still feel completely lost. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I still don't feel like I'm a better writer. But the difference is I know when something doesn't work. Like I know this doesn't work, and that's kind of been all the difference for me. So when it comes to writing action scenes, a lot of it's by feel now. Like I go to the action scene, and then instead of saying I want them to fight this way, I want them to end up here. I go, what are these characters feeling? What is the impact that of winning this fight mean to them, and how does it tear them up emotionally when this thing happens? And then just kind of let it kind of like organically blend together. And at some point, the real magic in writing is always in the editing and the rewrites. So, and then at some point after I have that initial scene, then I start layering it with, okay, well, let's look at the bigger picture for this. What does it mean for them when when they're fighting in this area, and how do we world build in an organic way that kind of like ties everything together, but in an interesting and not too dense kind of description. So I'm tweaking, I'm adding touches of paint to things to make it interesting. So there is some technical aspects to building atop those scenes, but for the most part, it's very organically done.
That's cool. That's cool. What when it comes to the Art of Destiny, is there is there a fight scene that you like is your sneaky favorite? Like what's the coolest fight scene that you would say is in, without giving any spoilers, is in the Art of Destiny?
um without giving it away, I do have several scenes when there are two shadow kills, or there are two people with the similar abilities who kind of fight, and it's almost not a fight because they do clash, but it's more like a cat and mouse chase. So I really enjoyed kind of like, here's this world, here's this, and here's all these buildings and gardens and shadows. Now let the games begin. Let them go. And I just kind of let them like go back and forth and like exploring how to really fully visualize um Kasami's martial arts. Like, and it's one of those things where like, you when you watch we read Marvel comics and you see how their powers are, right? But then once you watch a movie, you're like, oh, you could do so much more with these powers that I didn't even think about. And so it was kind of cool for me to like really explore how to really utilize their powers in a really cool way. So that's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it's such a cool scene as well. I know exactly the moment you're talking about, and it's yeah. I would agree with you that there is something really special about that scene. It's very, very cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
through the book, you just casually mentioned cannibalism a couple of times. So I thought, why
Right?
why not why not do it now? The the FanFiAddict family, we have our little like group chat, and more often than not, on a weekly basis, we are debating whether something is or isn't cannibalism. As a little behind the scenes sort of thing for you. One of the recent ones was, is eating a mermaid, does that classify as cannibalism or not? I have to get the Wesley Chu answer to be able to feed back to the group so that they can see, where we've all been going wrong for this, this past few weeks. So, Wesley Chu, what's your take on it? Eating a mermaid, where do you stand on it?
Is eating a mermaid cannibalism?
Hmm.
I mean, okay. Do you want the feeling answer or do you want the technical answer? Because I
Oh,
feel
give me
like
what's in your heart. Yeah.
do they speak my language?
Oh, that's a great thing to.
Because like, I mean, like,
Okay, if
okay,
if they did, what would the answer be? And if they didn't, would it change?
I, I mean, if I'm gonna put up like, if I'm gonna get a mermaid or a merman and put them on a roast, and they're like, "Don't eat me," I'm okay. Do I know if they taste like chicken?
We
No,
just got to assume they do.
no, no, no.
We've got to assume it.
Okay, no, okay. Legitimate answer is like, do they taste like fish? Because like, if I cut one open, okay, is there like a heart and lungs and like human top? Because or are they like the inside of like a salmon? Because that matters. Because that's what I'm actually eating.
Mm.
Let's put all the feeling aside and go, what's inside of them? Like literally, do they have fish bones? Like, or is the bottom of them like a fish and the top like a human? But then how does that work?
Exactly,
I
because
mean,
it's
look, the
like.
answer, and also no, the real answer is how hungry am I? Am I gonna die? Okay.
Wesley, thank you so much, because I think that has answered. That's given us so much more to think about. We will be talking about this answer for weeks in behind the scenes in FanFiAddict. That is awesome. Thank
All
you.
right.
But you're right. It's like, is it sushi or is it human? We just don't know. We don't know. But
Okay, now, there was there was an AMC show called The Terror that came out. It was an excellent series show. But at the very end, I think a bunch of British soldiers were stuck in the Arctic, and they were like, we're all starving men, and we're all gonna die, but we're not gonna eat each other because at least we died like gentlemen, you know. And like, I respect that, but as much as distasteful as it is to be a cannibalist, would I rather die than eat somebody else who's already dead? I don't know. I mean, look, this is like we're going to like a really dark place here, but like,
yeah, the interview is really. We've gone
okay,
from the art of destiny to,
I know,
would I
dude.
eat a dead person? I just don't know. It's like.
Okay. And don't even think about it as like right now. I'm not thinking about it as like, do I care to live that much? And the answer is no. I personally, I would probably rather just die than like eat another person. Okay, but it's not. But really, my life isn't about me. And let's just be honest here. It's about our kids. It's about our family. So like, would you eat a dead person? Or well, heck. Let's just be real. Let's just go real dark. Would you kill somebody and roast them and eat them in order to see your kids again? And I'm kind of like,
You know what?
yeah, fuck yeah,
That'd be like the starting point of a great book. Like
yeah.
just yeah, throwing it out there. Like, let's get it done, Wesley. The Wesley Chu Cannibal Diaries. Let's get it done. That could be a middle grade book.
Dude, my kids are 4 and 7, dude. I mean, I'm like, start the roast, bro.
Yeah. And that's the tagline. That's it. It's
Start the roast, bro. I gotta get back to my kids. I mean, and that's like it's like what are the things in your life that make you do these atrocities? And like, I mean, that's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. That's pretty disgusting. But like if I didn't have kids, I'd be like, fuck it. Like, I had a good life. Let's go. You know, we're done. But like, you know, I want to see my kids. Like, you know, I want my kids to bury me. So if that's the case, yeah, you know, I'm gonna have to eat somebody's arm, I guess.
It's how far would you go for your kids is something that I think every parent can relate to, which is why it's such a great starting point for stories, isn't it? It's like, and the kind of there's like an element of that, isn't there, in the Art of Destiny, because you have this is like a perfect segue to bring it back to the book because you have like
selling the book, everybody. I forgot about that. Like, ignore the cannibalism thing now, please.
So you have like this relationship. It's almost like parental relationship with mentor and mentee between Taishi and Jian. Was that rooted in sort of like a real life mentor mentee relationship? You know, because it feels really real, or is it more rooted in sort of like a parental sort of thing for you?
I mean,
or is that too hard a question to ask?
I feel like I'm a lot nicer parent than Taishi is. Sort of. Okay, so it is not rooted in real life. I think really, and that relationship really wasn't intentional. It just like Taishi is who she is. I created her first, and and she was a fully formed human being coming out of my head when I first created her. And Jen was not fully formed, but that's by design of who he is as a young kid. And I view him as a puppy. Okay, like when I first got my Airedale Terrier, a long time ago, I literally spent like 2 hours like trying to pick which puppy to adopt. Okay, and at some point, the breeder who probably was tired of me, she was like, "Look, the truth is, it doesn't really matter. Every puppy is basically a blank slate, And that's kind of how I approached Jin. He was a puppy, and I put him in the situation where he was raised in opulence, raised by corrupt masters, raised by all these other influences that wanted to control him, want his influence, his inherent influence for who he is, for their own gain. What happens to somebody who's in that situation? Okay, the only thing that I imprinted upon him was like I assumed he had a good heart, and even then, that's you can get a good card can be twisted if given the wrong influences. So I put him so I let him grow up in that environment, and then I made his decisions and assumptions and thoughts based off of how I think he would have, what the person he would have become. He was raised. That's in many ways he's equally a victim of everything else because of his surroundings. So when they met, I let them have that organic relationship, and that's how it became. And part of it was because Taishi has her own background, which I created, which kind of influenced how she is, and I let that interaction kind of like meld together organically. So when you say it felt very real, I think part of it just because I because it was real,
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about adaptations. So,
okay,
if the War Arts Saga was going to be adapted, what would be your dream adaptation? Is it like movie, series, anime, video game, something else?
So the War Arts Saga it has been optioned. It was optioned quite a while ago, and it's still currently being held. I really can't talk too much about it, but at one point, we I had the choice between do you want to go film or do you want to go TV, and it was a really tough choice because the producer who wanted to go film was a really big producer, but the calculus is a little different when it comes to adaptations because obviously we all have a dream of what we want it to be, but the real calculus, once you're the source of the IP, is there's the money aspect, and there's the storytelling aspect, but there's also the aspect of like what gives this property the best possible chance of getting made. The 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 journey from being an option to getting that green lit is very long. It's a thousand no's. I'm not sorry, it's a thousand yeses, but anytime there's a no, the whole thing dies. So there's that aspect of it. At the end of the day, I went for the television route, and part of the calculus is that it is a lot easier to make a TV show than it is to make a movie. You don't need 100, especially when you're doing like a fantasy period epic. You need $100 million to make that movie. But when you make a TV show, you don't need that much, which gives it much cleaner path to getting it made. But not just that. I mean, that's just the business aspect, but from a storytelling aspect, I've always felt like when you have an IP set up as a series, like Game of Thrones, you can tell that story much more fully. You like imagine if Game of Thrones was a movie. Like imagine all the crap they would have to cut out just to make it fit in like a 3-hour movie. It'd be impossible, and it would it would lose a lot of its heart, a lot of its fantastic storytelling. So for the War Saga, I went for the TV route because I wanted that. Whatever, even as a limited series, it'd be 8 to 10 hours. If it's an ongoing series like Wheel of Time is right now, then you can really tell a great story. I mean, I don't know if you're watching the Wheel of Time, and there are people complaining, "Oh, it's not like the book. Like it's not like this, like Robert Jordan's 13 books." I'm like, no one can do that. It's impossible. But they adapted it in a way where I'm like, I see the characters, I see the relationships, and it is they're following it close enough in a way where like I really buy into it, and that's kind of really what I want with the War Saga. Is I want to tell the complete story, and I want the story to keep its soul and keep its characters. So it just felt like the TV route at the time was the natural way to go.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that if I would love it to be a TV series because it is dense and it is layered, and you've got these acts written into the story that if they were condensed too much, that it would really affect the story. So I'm really glad to hear that it would be a longer format thing. That's brilliant. I kind of feel like with adaptations, it's not so much the accuracy of translating it from the page onto the screen, but the feel. Like if
Yep.
you've got the feel of something right, then it's a great adaptation.
Right.
No matter how far it deviates from the original source material, it's got to feel the same, hasn't it?
I mean, the problem. I think the problem is a lot of people feel like when their favorite book has been converted to screen, it should be a faithful retelling of that book, and that's not the case. An adaptation at that point is shared storytelling. So there's the author who writes the book, then there's the showrunner or screenwriter who wrote the. Now that is no longer the author's IP. That is a shared story because there are so many different variables involved when you do film that that the novelist never has to even worry about. The novelist that they don't even know what they don't know at that point because it's a whole different medium. So I'm very forgiving of adaptations because it is it's a whole separate universe.
Definitely, definitely. Let's. I just want to talk to you about like a hypothetical time salvager scenario because I absolutely love the concept for time salvager of going back into the past to be able to get things to bring into the present. If you could go into the past into any sort of period, is there something that you would go and retrieve that would help you with like the finishing the War Arts Saga for like writing this next book? Is there like an item or a period you'd want to go back to?
I mean, the question then is, am I being allowed to time travel? Because I'm I'm not gonna lie. Okay. I actually had this talk with Brandon Sanderson a few months ago on his YouTube channel. But like, dude, if I had the ability to time travel, the only thing I would do is go back in time and figure out how to make as much money as possible. Okay. I don't know if I have to bet on the Super Bowl. I don't know if I need to get the lottery numbers. Whatever it is, I'm gonna get rich. Okay. and I'm sure as hell not gonna go back and like fix my book. Like I remember like because Brandon and I were talking. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll go back and buy all the magic cards for cheap. Brandon's a huge magic player, and I'm like, bro, there's you, go buy Apple stock. I don't know. Go. There's so many things you can do to like magic cards are great, and you can get a couple Black Lotuses, I'm sure, but like there's better ways to make money. But anyways,
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, then because then you go back and you can be like, yeah, this doesn't have to be my 13th. This could be like debut number 1 because I'm already super rich. Like
yeah,
it's all good.
or you know what? If I could write The Art of Prophecy as my debut novel, I mean, I think I'd be like my career would be vastly different. It's my early, but I debuted in small press, 10 years ago. And Eliza Tao did really really well, but it was a small press debut, so life would be different now.
You would be onto your middle grade already. That's for
I know,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have a phrase, and I go, friends don't let friends write big books. Okay, because there is an aspect of fatigue that happens when you write a big book, and when you write a big series, it is, I mean, it is infinitely more complex, and it has burned me out a little bit writing these big books. So like, yeah, you're probably right. I would have gotten my big books out of the way, and I'd be writing like these 30,000 word, tiny, cute middle grade books because they're like palate cleansers, and they're easy, and they don't keep me up at night.
So you said that you were writing the 3rd book at the minute. Have you got a plan for what you'll be writing once this one's done, or is it are you just kind of just going to wait and then see where you're at the end of this one?
I mean, okay, from a business aspect, it depends on on what my publisher wants. Right now this is my fantasy debut with a series with them, so usually the common assumption is that they would want you to write more fantasy because they kind of build that fan base. Fantasy fan bases tend to like be more. They're more of a slower burn. But it depends. If not, then so here's the thing: is like most authors have like a ton of ideas. Like, do you have like 100 ideas in your head that you kind of just pluck one out of the air, out of the idea tree, and then you start working on it?
Yeah. Usually on a daily basis. Yeah, it's like
See,
too many ideas to handle. Yeah.
I'm not like that. I actually have no ideas. Like I'm one of those dudes where I have like one idea and I hold on to it for like fucking 5 years, and finally I'll write it. And then I'm just like, I'm just hoping that another idea comes before I finish this book. And it's one of those my ideas are like wars by attrition, or like once in a while I have an idea, and most of the time it'll slip out of my head, which usually tells me that this idea is not that great or it's not worth really exploring. But if something sticks with me for a long period of time, I mean, Art of Prophecy stuck with me for 5 years. You know, that's when I know, okay, this idea has legs. This idea is something I really care about, which I want to explore and write.
Awesome. So yeah, when you get that idea, yeah, I'm going to be super excited to hear about it. That'll be absolutely amazing. But in the meantime, for anybody who wants to connect with you, and anybody who's enjoyed listening to this interview wants to find out more, where can they find you, Wesley?
You can find me at wesleychu.com. That's more kind of like my home base. I used to be bigger on Twitter, shitter, whatever it's called now. But I'm not there as often anymore for reasons. You can find me on Facebook primarily now. I have some Instagram presence, but not a lot. So it's, yeah. I've taken a step back from social media, but anytime anybody wants to find me, just hit me up, on any of those social media sites, and I'll probably answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Wesley. It's been a genuine pleasure to meet you and to chat. And yeah, all the best with what's coming next on book 3.